So unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know who Nik Sharma is and the incredible marketer that this man is. I'm really excited for this episode and for you guys to listen in on this. My biggest takeaway after talking with Nik and even just re-listening is the ability to problem solve and think holistically around the customer journey, and how that is always your brand's biggest arbitrage opportunity is the ability to think holistically around the customer journey. Just the way that Nik thinks about not just ads, not just landing pages, not just emails, but everything pulling on the same end of the rope in order to achieve success. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that I took away after my conversation with Nik. I think that'll be your biggest takeaway, is just from a 30,000 foot view and also getting into the weeds with Nik on certain topics. It was a really exciting episode. So I'm excited for you guys to listen in on this one, and let's jump in. What is up, Nik? How's it going?
Good, man. How are you? Excited to do this finally.
I know. Well, why don't you introduce yourself if no one's ever heard of you? If you've been living under a rock, why don't you tell people who Nik Sharma is?
For sure. So I'm Nik. I've spent most of my career working in the marketing world, or actually most of my life probably doing something related to marketing. I run a company called Sharma Brands. We're kind of a agency / digital, I don't know. It's a cross between I call us like a mix between a McKinsey and a performance agency. We do a lot of strategy work, but we also do what I call the homework or the execution too. But yeah, I'm an investor in a bunch of different companies, advisor to a bunch of companies, all within the e-commerce space. That's kind of the only space I tend to play in. That's about it.
So between the brands you invest in and the brands that you have as clients, you have insights into probably how many?
Oh, at least 100 companies.
And what are you seeing in the e-com space right now? At least, like, I know you could probably just have a gauge on what you see on whether D2C Twitter is a real life or not. Probably not.
Yeah.
But into your portfolio, let's just call it, what are you seeing?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say, everything is fairy tales and rainbows right now. It's definitely a challenging time, I think, for e-commerce. The biggest thing I've seen is like brands that actually have a brand, meaning if they were to turn their ads off today and still be able to get sales, those are actually the brands that are doing the best. They have the best numbers and the most ability to, solve problems and continue to grow. Whereas the ones that don't have that ability are having the hardest time right now. And it makes sense. There's so many things being thrown at people and being put in front of people. And if you don't have something other than just that, quick cut Facebook ad to get you or to get somebody excited about your brand, then you're not really in a favorable spot.
Yeah, I love what you just said, where you defining your brand as when you turn your ads off. I had a previous guest, Preston Rutherford, who launched and sold Chubbies on the show, and he talked about that in a really cool way of just like, what is your resilient base of revenue. Basically, like total revenue coming from that resilient base, as if we just turned off all advertising, didn't launch an email, like how many customers are you actually coming back to buy you? Which I thought that was just a really cool way of looking at it.
And Chubbies did a phenomenal job even quantifying the impact of brand advertising.
Sure.
Down to like, what is the dollar amount that we can expect when we gain a new follower on Instagram or gain a new subscriber over email. And I think that is sort of where we are. I think that's where everybody in this space is going eventually. Mike Dubois calls it, I think he just calls it like brand media, but he says, brand media like pays itself back over a longer period of time than obviously performance media does. It still pays itself back, but just a way longer payback window.
Right. And we'll get into that and later on when we probably talk about influencer as involved in that. A bit of a spontaneous question. You probably have so many people come to you for a variety of different things. What do you feel like, if I had to choose one thing that I'm just like killer at, what is it?
I think personally, I'm best for like problem solving. My favorite situation is when I get a call and it's like, yo, this morning, one of the companies I invested in is like, Shopify's got this going on. We're trying to do this. We don't know how to like get in a way that, helps us out. And even problem solving that all the way to, getting a call that's like, our numbers are way down after this sale. We don't know what's wrong with Facebook or if we need to reallocate budget. Can you jump in and take a look? Anytime where I can jump in and problem solve, that is, I think, it's what I love doing best. And it's, I think, where I'm most valuable. And then I can help kind of like with giving advice on what the next steps are. And then outside of that, like anything conversion, optimization, landing page, site optimization, positioning, angle testing. I love that stuff.
It's interesting how most often the time your best skill set is what you love most doing, what you're most passionate about.
100%. The zone of genius.
Yeah, that's right. How involved are you in let's just say the P&L when you take on a brand?
Fairly involved. Like when we're talking to brands, we're modeling things out around profit, not just revenue. Super involved. Cause like it's, I would say 2 years ago, probably not as much, like when there was a lot of money being thrown around, or it's very easy to raise money or just grab a loan or open another credit card and have a huge line of credit. But now, the things that I think brands care about the most are like, at least from my perspective, it's like profit, then revenue, then proactivity. And so those are kind of the things we focus on, is like, is everything we're doing or everything that we're talking about or everything we want to do, does it correlate back to generating more bottom line profit, or is it just growing this top line, but it doesn't really, if you make $1 million and it takes you 900 grand to get that million, you're not really making $1 million. So I think looking at like the bottom line has become huge for us. It's something we review weekly with our clients. And a lot of times too, we'll go back and look at past years if we're modeling out the next month and try to understand, okay, what happened at the bottom line, last June versus what are we planning to do this June that might be slightly different.
Year over year change. Define proactivity. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think most service-led businesses are just not proactive once you get past a certain point. Typically, I've found that like when an agency gets past probably like 100K in revenue to the agency, things, then it becomes, that's really like your point of, all right, are we going to stay small and continue to do what we're doing with the team we have and limit our clients? Or are we going to bring on more clients with the same team? Or option C is, are we going to bring on more clients, but we're also going to then continue to build out the infrastructure? And it's a big decision because it's either like, all right, do we stay at, call it, 60% margin? Do we try to increase our margin, but then our bandwidth per client goes down and the quality of work also goes down? Or option C, do we just, basically cut our margin in half, but we can build a bigger company? And in any of those scenarios, the thing that always happens is agencies stop being proactive in coming to the table with ideas or recommendations. It sort of flips from, hey, we want to bring you all the cool stuff, to the brand is just telling the agency what they need done. And that proactivity sometimes gets lost. And so for us, at least for me, like, coming from being on the brand side and also knowing what a good agency is and a shitty agency is, for me, proactivity is like one of the biggest things, because especially if we have a vantage point where we see so many things across the board, and not to mention just being, I think we're very well connected within the industry. There's so many opportunities we can bring to the table, whether it's billboards for our clients or TV spots or whatever it may be. Just the proactiveness, I think, is huge. And I think a lot of service businesses tend to lack that as they grow. And, that's how agencies just also get bad reps.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's lots of noise out there for sure. That's really great. What is your filtering system since you invest in startups? And have an opinion on this, but what is your filtering system? Like, what's the category? What's the gross margin you're looking at? Like benchmarks for success where you're even entertaining something like this?
Yeah. So a lot of times when I invest, I'm usually in like the pre-seed or the seed. Very rarely am I in the Series A. Usually there's 3 funds that I'm a part of, and I will usually try to run it by them first. If there's something that I really like, I'll try to run it by them and see if they'll take the check. Because I also have shared upside in that opportunity if they end up wanting to write the check. If they don't, then I'll write it personally if I'm really convinced that it's something that's going to do really well. But what I look for a lot of times, the revenue doesn't even exist yet. And so I have to basically try to do some math on my own of, okay, is there, Moyes actually does something where he looks at public company comps before he makes investments, which I think is really smart. I've never done that before. I basically look for a couple things. One, like, is this founder going to crush? Because I've invested in the first, handful or couple handful of companies I invested in, I thought these are phenomenal ideas. There's no way this is not going to work. But then you come to learn like, oh, the founder also has to work. The founder has to be scrappy. The founder has to be okay, not making $300K a year.
He's even more important than the idea.
Yeah, exactly. The founder has to be really good at being able to recruit talent and hire people. They have to be really good at understanding how to build systems. And it's a lot harder. I mean, as you know, building a company, it's very fucking hard. It's not easy to build a company. 9 out of 10 companies fail within 2 years. And out of the ones that survive, 9 out of 10 of those basically become stagnant or zombie companies. So you literally have a 1% chance of a company continuing to grow past 2 years. And so that's one. The other one I look at is like, is this realistic? Like, all right, this new, let's call it a new gummy vitamin is raising at $25 million. Okay, well, that means that they have to get to probably $20 million in sales to either exit or raise another round. So is this money that they're, the $3 million or $2 million they're raising now, is that going to get them to that level where they can actually then go either raise again or maybe have an exit or some sort of another, transaction event? That stops me from probably 95% of investments nowadays, is just the fact that the valuations that they have, it just doesn't make sense in my head that they're going to be able to go out again and get that money. And either I'm very wrong or a lot of other people are very wrong, and I still don't know which one it is yet.
So is there any sort of like, because we do financial forecasting, I get insights into some of these things where come to find out they have 25% gross margin or, and they're in the food and beverage space and they're direct to consumer fresh food delivery, and really tough margins, or a drink that's really tough margins, or you're like a supplement and you have amazing margins. Like, is that one of the metrics that you're looking for? Because I think some of the things that you're bringing up right now are just straight gut, which I would be interesting to hear, unless you guys put them through the ringer of homework of like, hey, what's your decision making? It's almost like making it higher, right? Just like personality tests. Let's get a gauge on what this founder is like, how they are as an operator, because you don't have pre-existing history, you don't have pre-existing proof of concept. Maybe they've done Kickstarters, things like that. So I'm just curious, like the practicalities of what you're looking at when you're looking at some of those things.
Yeah. It's tough. Like, there's sometimes opportunities where we are working, like if Sharma Brands is helping to launch a brand, like if we're hired to launch a brand, we obviously have a different side of insights. Like when we were working with Jolie and I saw the opt-in rate for the water report was 80% on the landing page, I was like, this is going to be my biggest investment ever. And it was. And, I was like, this is a huge opportunity. Like this is going to crush. But in most cases, yeah, we don't have that, and definitely look at margins, or definitely look at, like Chamberlain. But you also have to look at like the the whole picture. So like with Chamberlain, I probably would not have invested if it wasn't Emma Chamberlain's coffee company, because that provides a disproportionate advantage compared to the fact that it's a beverage business. Same with like maybe Feastables. You know, the thought of going to challenge Hershey's in retail is kind of a ludicrous idea, except if you're Mr. Beast, then it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, definitely look at all those things. Really, like what I look for is like, all right, what's going to get them to their first 10 million in revenue? Like, do they have some sort of secret sauce that's going to get them to 10 million? Do they understand the market they're going into? Like, on the CPG side, I mean, like, are they creating something that is going to actually taste good? If it's a food or beverage product, there's a ton of beverage products that taste like shit, and nobody tells their founder friends the truth. And they launch these products and they flop very quickly because
Like
they
they're
taste
trying
terrible.
out for American Idol, and you're just like, no, friends or family
you're
told
like,
you that you don't sing.
Exactly.
Like you can't sing.
Yeah, seriously. And then, really, I look for the moat. Like I can give you a couple examples. With Black Wolf Nation, I wrote the first check into Black Wolf Nation, men's personal care brand. They got well over 10 million with 2 people, and they owned their own 3PL. And I was like, okay, that's your advantage. You're a very lean team. You've proven you know how to do that, and you own your 3PL. You save a bunch of money there.
Which is one of the big advantages of running a D2C business is you can run it incredibly lean.
Exactly. Then, like any of the celebrity brands, it's like, okay, there's another checklist I use for that, which is, does the celebrity have, basically I say like, can they move product? Can they actually drive sell through? Do they have an audience that's actually going to buy for them, or do people follow them because they have a nice butt? And so there's a whole thing there. But yeah, now I feel like I'm ranting, but a lot of it has to be gut, just because, or like, me trying to think of patterns that might match or not match. But most of it is sort of, I guess, just guessing at the end of the day based on the context that I have from everything else that we've done.
There's a problem today with too much fake UGC saturation. Consumers are looking for authentic reviews and content, and this is a way that you can stand out in your crowded market with authentic influencer content. So Cody here with an ad read for Get Cyril. So there's an explosion of D2C brands across categories. You got to be able to stick out. We here at Kinship actually use Cyril for influencer discovery, but Cyril is not just a discovery tool, but a way that you can search for brand aligned influencers, but reach out directly. You can manage them all in place. You can track performance all within one platform. So brands like Avi, Legends, Tab Chocolate are using them to get hundreds of creators talking about them on socials, and you can too. And in addition to that, all of our clients here at Kinship that are doing seeding are using that platform as well. So you can start your free 7-day trial with Cyril to get authentic UGC. Go check them out. One of the things, like when I get on the phone with folks, it's almost shocking how much founders and operators are financially illiterate. Like they just don't know their own numbers. When I ask, hey, what's just ballpark, what's your blended COGS? They don't know their landed costs, like just rolling off the top of their head. I'm just curious on your side, how much that presents an issue, or not, or how much you guys can help there. And is that some of the counsel that you're providing when you're looking at Sharma brands or investments or anything like that?
Yeah. For investments, like if people don't know those numbers, that's a huge red flag for me. I'm like, okay, well, if you don't know your numbers, how do I expect you to care for my money that's going in too, Honestly, the other thing I think about is like, okay, what's over the next 5 years, where am I going to make more money? If I invest in this personal care brand, or if I just put money into a treasuries account that prints 5% every month? And most of the time, the second one is actually the winning option. Especially in the last year, I feel like there's been just a lot fewer great opportunities like there used to be before. And I think part of that is also just the fact that there is less money being invested. So there's less smart people deciding to take big risks here, because if you take a big risk, even if it's a great idea and there's no money behind it, then what are you doing?
So what do you think your biggest marketing challenge will be next year? 48%, so half of people said achieving low CAC. And then in 10, well, even before that, it was, you had put, what do you think your biggest marketing challenge? They put achieving low CAC, but in the third option, generating enough ad creative. was third behind increasing brand awareness. I just thought it was interesting because achieving the low CAC, one of the best things that you could do would be some of the other answers, like generating enough ad creative. I think that was one of the things that you elaborated on in your kind of breakdown of this report. I just wanted to spend time on this because I think this is one of the things that, like, obviously we care about as an agency with running meta ads. We generate a ton of creative. Achieving low CAC is such a huge thing. I mean, it was overwhelmingly the number one answer. But I often think a lot of people are not thinking about this holistically in terms of what are the solutions to this. Everybody, of course, wants lower CAC. They want lower CPAs on their meta ads. But what is the thing that's going to achieve that is typically the number one challenge.
There's things you could do tactically that'll help you drive lower CAC. Like, I feel like we're also in a bubble where because we're running accounts, we see in the way that we would run accounts, we operate a lot differently than I'd say 99% of people who are buying ads. Majority of people buying ads are putting up some static creative or some video that they got, and it's probably been the same creative they've been running for at least a few weeks, if not months. And it's either going to a homepage, a collections page, or a product page, all three of which are probably not optimized for new customers. They're probably not optimized to receive catalog traffic, aka traffic that has no context other than the product image coming to it. And they've probably never run creator ads. They've probably never run whitelisting. They've probably never run advertorials. They've probably never run enriched catalogs. They've probably never run, like video view retargeting audiences that drive to PDPs. And then they're like, how come our CAC doesn't go down? Or Facebook's getting too expensive. But the reality is, like, there's so much more competition. All you just have to do is just figure out, okay, what is the next thing that's going to get in front of the eyeballs better than what everybody else is doing? And I think, like, as a marketer today, your entire job, actually in general, a marketer's job is always to just figure out what is the next arbitrage opportunity that I can take advantage of before everybody else catches up. I remember 8 years ago, I was doing advertorials with Hintwater, and we were getting, 10,000 customers a day because we were doing advertorials at a CPA that was 75% lower than what our brand ads were. And I was like, this is the arbitrage we're going to use for 2 years to build a massive D2C beverage business. And it did. But, it doesn't work as effective anymore. It still works very effectively, probably talking like 30% lower CAC. But, now it's like, what's the next arbitrage? I think what you guys do, you guys have sort of morphed into more e-commerce in general, but what you started with was that arbitrage. And yeah, that's why it was so successful.
Which we can touch on. I think the creative volume too, I'm just curious even too, like the brands that you have insights to, just how much creative volume that these brands need to keep up with, because obviously the more that you spend, just the more creative volume that you need, but it's also a quality. Like, it can't just be low quality. But how I think about Facebook too is just where I want to lean into the machine learning system as much as possible to spend my next best dollar to go out and achieve new customers. And a lot of times people are thinking, well, I just want lower CAC, but they're not changing any of the mechanisms. That quote of every system is perfectly designed to get the results it's getting, but they're not changing the system, but they're expecting different results. So yeah, it's really interesting. Like, when we audit ad accounts and I'm seeing really, really low ad creatives nowadays, when the narrative creative is the new targeting has been around for, I feel like, a couple of years now, where it's like, Facebook's made it incredibly simple to run ads, or more simple, let's just say, without even taking adjustments into the account. But just launching a campaign with ASC is like, my mom could do this. But it makes creative even more important. And most of the time, that creative pipeline is such a hard thing to scale for brands. I'm just curious, like, if you see the same thing with a lot of your brands.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's so like a lot of times when, when people are like, our CAC is high, my response is, okay, so that means we need to rethink the angle and the positioning of how we're pitching the product. If you sell rice cakes and your ads talk about low calorie snack, that's not as effective as the best pre-workout snack or the best post school snack you could give your kids. And that angle and repositioning or reframing of the pitch essentially is probably the biggest thing anybody can do on the marketing side to completely change their numbers. Like the biggest leverage impact will come from that. The second thing would be, so that's one. The second one is obviously the offer that's on the page. Do you have a new customer offer? Like if you don't, I don't know what you're doing. It's 2024. And if you're sending people to a dead product page and you don't have a specified landing page or even an optimized product page, like Everyday Dose has a very good optimized product page as their landing page, then you're also just losing opportunity there, but also everything else around that. So like, what's the creative? Is there a lot of creative testing going on? Are you testing studio versus lifestyle versus creator versus UGC versus whitelisting influencer versus advertorial? And then on the next stage, do you have an optimized email pop-up? Are you collecting 3% of emails, which is the industry standard, or are you using Amped and Black Crow and getting 15% of opt-ins and then using the spread between the 15% and the 2% conversion rate? You've got 13% of people who are interested and not ready to buy today. What are you doing with that welcome series? Are you using email as an acquisition tool, or is it just to go to your returning customers, which is a big mistake a lot of email agencies make. And that's why we created our own email team, was because no one wanted to use email for acquisition, but there's a huge opportunity to get those people who are basically on the fence. So I think my Facebook CAC is high ends up being a whole thing of the positioning, the creative, the landing page and the post-click experience, the email series, the SMS follow-ups, like all that combines into how you lower the CAC. It's not just like the platform is broken.
I love what you just said, because one of the things that iOS did, right, was just made all of us better. We had to think more holistically. We couldn't just be in platform, and it was easy,
Yeah, we couldn't be Chads just sitting down and clicking a button and making money.
Exactly. So I think looking at it holistically, people get so siloed into a particular channel. Let's talk about influencer. We can't chat today without talking about influencers. That's certainly how we connected. It's also both of our backgrounds. I mean, a lot of your background was Hint and, learning influencer and doing celebrity brands and all these different things. It's funny how we've evolved as an agency. Is becoming less influencer centric, but still influencers such to the ethos of our agency. And it's actually, I've gone through cycles of this where I feel like influencers is becoming more or less important. But as I sit right now, especially with the volatility of a particular channel like Facebook, I think your product into the wild of the community, seeding your product, having product in people's hands, and how that actually affects Facebook is incredibly crucial today. So give me your thoughts, like what you're seeing with your, again, just going back to the hundreds of brands that you have insights into.
So with influencer, I feel like there's a few ways people work with influencers. One is obviously like the old school way, the big campaign, plaster their face, like Olivia Rodrigo and Glossier, good example of that recently. Use the face, the name, image, likeness, and just the idea is, okay, no one's going to care if Glossier has a poster, but if it's a poster with Olivia Rodrigo on it, now you've earned somebody's attention for at least 5 seconds. And that's essentially what you're buying, is 5 seconds of attention. The other way is you put out, you work with influencers, let's say you're a supplement brand. You work with that crew of wellness influencers in LA. They put out, they talk about your product, and really what you're buying there is sometimes you're buying reach. Other times you're just buying the cosign that says, hey, this person who you've 100,000 people who follow Holly Owens, for example. If she's down with our product, then you guys should be okay with our product. And a lot of times that still won't convert directly, but it buys the cosign and it sort of, stretches that awareness a little bit. And then what we love to do is the whitelisting, like creating the content and then running it as ads. And that does a couple things. One is, from a tactical standpoint, your CPC probably drops 50%. And then two is it just allows you to take good content that feels probably a lot more natural than I think most Facebook ads look like billboards in the feed. Whereas I think something like this feels a lot more natural and organic. It's contextual to the feed. And also these people, especially if you get like YouTubers, these people are made to talk to a camera lens. So they know exactly how to speak to the camera in a way where you feel like you're talking to them. And then you put that, you light that on fire with a whitelisted ad. Ideally go to a good landing page that has a good offer there. And that is one of the best ways. Then there's also like the mass celebrity seeding. You get the Kardashians posting and the Chrissy Teigens posting, and that doesn't actually drive many sales unless it's their own brands. Then that drives a ton of sales. But if it's not their own brand, then all it does is it lowers your CPM for the next 2 days on Facebook, so you can spend more money. And Facebook somehow knows that Courtney posted this brand, so when you're running ads, it'll show it more to those people. That's all unverified, by the way. It's my gut. That's what I think happens because that's what I've seen.
All right. Well, we'll hold you to that. The influencer piece. There was an interesting conversation with the Operators podcast the other day where Mike Beckham was talking about impressions and how he was talking about Hexclad doing the Costco roadshow versus running Facebook ads. And those impressions, if they were both 1,000, those 1,000 impressions at the Costco roadshow are not equal. Like someone holding your product and talking and engaging with it for 15 minutes versus, a scroll through with 1 second on an ad. And I almost think it's a very great parallel with influencer, where influencer have this incredible ability to build trust with an audience. And that holds, even if it's a second difference, that's really different on Facebook versus any other channel. So
totally. There's also this like third dimension of influencer that I feel like has emerged in the last 12 months or maybe 2 years, which is just like getting very subtle placement, almost like if you know, like Aritzia does a very good job of this. Actually, apparel brands, I think, do the best job of this, where they'll seed something and they don't ask for a post. They don't ask for any tags. They'll just be seen wearing it and it'll be caught and put in a tabloid or some internet article or something.
Taylor Swift, aka.
Yeah. I mean, her wearing the shorts, some pink pair of shorts, like sold out this brand for forever.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah. So I think that's like another part of it that I think is really interesting. There's also, I would say, from a awareness and acquisition standpoint, these influencers like Melissa Wood or Lauren Everett's The Skinny Confidential, when you can do sort of a 360 integration with them, across social, organic, whitelisting, and on their podcast, it's a holy grail of awareness and sales.
What is one CTA that you want to give the listeners? Call to action.
I would say sign up for the newsletter, nik.co/email. It's completely free. If you sign up, you get a 40-page brand deck. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. But give me a shot. You've listened this far. Give me a shot.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely.